was the Ark of God. And it represented the presence of God. And David says, this ain't nearly extravagant enough. And they're ready to bring this in. Let me just put it to you this way. David commissions extravagant cooperation. Extravagant cooperation. But then it gets a little crazy. Read the next few verses with me. So David and the elders of Israel and the commanders of units of 1,000 went to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord from the house of Obed-Edom with rejoicing. Because God had helped the Levites who were carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord, 7 bulls and 7 rams were sacrificed. Now David was clothed in a robe of fine linen, as were all the Levites who were carrying the ark, and as were the musicians, and Kenaniah, who was in charge of the singing of the choirs. David also wore a linen ephod, that apron thing. So all Israel brought up the ark of the covenant of the Lord with shouts and with the sounding of ram's horns and trumpets and of cymbals and the playing of lyres and harps. As the ark of the covenant of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, watched from a window. And when she saw King David dancing and celebrating, she despised him in her heart. Here's a person who is expressing extravagant worship, and someone standing nearby them is despising them. I think I saw the same thing in the disciples when the lady cracked a bottle of perfume. But it's not just that. We have to skip over to 2 Samuel to get the rest of the story. 2 Samuel tells us the same story with a little bit different level of detail. Chapter 6, verse 12. So just flip on over there. 2 Samuel, chapter 6. Beginning in verse 12. Now, we're going to skip down and pick it up in verse 14. Wearing a linen ephod, David was dancing before the Lord with all his might, while he and Israel were bringing up the ark of the Lord with shouts and the sound of trumpets. As the ark of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, watched from a window. And when she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she despised him in her heart. Skip down to verse 20. When David returned home to bless his household, Michal, daughter of Saul, came out to meet him and said, "How the king of Israel has distinguished himself today, going around half naked in full view of the slave girls of his servants, as any vulgar fellow would." Apparently in his dancing, the ephod, which covers the front and the back, was not necessarily well wrapped around him in the middle. And she was embarrassed. David said to her, "It was before the Lord who chose me rather than your father, or anyone from his house when he appointed me ruler over the Lord's people Israel. I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes. But by those slave girls you spoke of, I will be held in honor." And David's response is, "I don't care how I look in front of other people when I'm worshiping God. I don't care. There's an ark. The presence of God is coming to this city, and all those guys were playing the instruments, and it was good. And all that noise was happening, and it was awesome. And I was at the front of the line, and boy howdy, I just tell you, I lost it. I was just dancing. And it was before the Lord, not you. I'm not dancing for you. I'm dancing just because I got to do something. I gave all the instruments to everybody else. I gave all the singing to the people who are better than me. What else am I going to do? I just got to dance." And he dances with all his might. This is all he had. David is the one who organized the entire thing. David is the one who planned it all. David is the one even who wrote the song they were singing. But when the time came, he just let loose and was dancing. I put it this way. David offers an extravagantly surrendered self. He says, "My whole being belongs only to God." Only to God. The lesson is extravagance. Worship of a supremely valuable God means we should be extravagant kinds of people. But if the lesson is extravagance, the application for us today is music. Go ahead and jot that down. If the lesson is extravagance, the application for us today is music, because music is the one thing where you can do all this other extravagance at the same time. Skill. You need skill if you're going to do music well. In fact, last year, for most of 2012, we had some better vocalists in the church, and so I stepped out of this microphone situation, and I was actually standing in the back. Jake had me playing the bass a couple weeks. And then, just recently, Jake told me, I'm not allowed to play the bass anymore. Why? Because we value skill around here. You know what I'm saying? So Jake says, you can't get back there anymore. I said, come on, man, why? And he was going, you were doing the do-do-do-do-do thing. And I was like, yeah, that's right. You know, you're supposed to do da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, really? And so anyway, he says, I can't get back there again. Because we value skill around this place, okay? So skill's one thing. Expense. Listen, our soundboard was dying just a couple weeks ago. And we began talking about what it was going to take for us to replace the soundboard. And boy, howdy, those things are expensive. It's cost $3,000 to do a soundboard. Well, about a month ago, there was a very generous family in the church that called me up and said, I heard a rumor you're looking for a new soundboard. How much does that cost? I said, $3,000. And they said, well, we can put in $1,000. And I said, are you nuts? And they said, no, we want to do it. So we have a new soundboard today. And it cost $3,000. We put money into our worship, into our music, all this stuff up here. Dude, if Joe just told you how much his gear was worth, you would, I'm not even going to say what you would do, but you'd just stand there and be like, duh. And he didn't even buy it. It was given to him. I'm not even telling you all that. But anyway, so here's the deal. It's expensive, all right? It's expensive. It's extravagant. But there's something else that's going on when we get together and we play music. There's a whole world of extravagance that happens up here in the planning and the cooperation. And there's a whole world of extravagance that happens in the preparation of the writing the songs and finding good songs and buying good sound equipment and whatnot. But there's a world of extravagance that needs to happen out here. And I'm going to ask you today to do so. We saved 4 songs for the end. And when we get to our 4 final songs, I'm going to ask you, in the middle of the songs, to shout and cheer and make noises. Because it's supposed to happen today. And at the end of every song, I want you to clap and shout and cheer. Just because it's supposed to happen today. And in the song where you begin to realize God is speaking to you, I want you to raise your hand. Just because it's supposed to happen today. And eventually one of these moments, extravagance, will become part of your soul as well. So that you can express maybe just a tiny little bit of David. You don't have to strip naked and dance around this building. Please don't. I will let you dance a little bit. We got a little room over here if you want to just kind of boogie. But, you know, my journey, and this will be the last thing I say, so then we'll go to our time of reflection. But my journey of music culminated in 8th grade, where the school began to introduce a band. And 8th grade, I got disgusted by it. I was like, what is all this silliness? Spending so much effort on all this pointless music stuff. And in 9th grade, I began to have a change of heart, not towards music, but towards God. And I said, God, I want more than anything to know what it means just to love you. I spent evenings in prayer asking for God to just reveal to me, let me know what it means to love Him. And I made a commitment at one point in time that if God brought an opportunity my way, I would take that opportunity. And then for half of the 9th grade year, I spent every one of those chapels just hating the band on stage. In fact, the band was composed of people that I knew, guys that were sort of friends of mine, that I could not believe they were making such fools of themselves in front of the whole group of students. They were up there playing guitars and keyboards, and there was a drummer. And then Mrs. Haskins was all off to the side, playing the piano with one hand, while the other hand was all up in the air and her eyes were closed. And I remember saying to God at that moment, I said, God, I will never do anything so silly, so pointless. And I imagine God took notes. At that moment in time, I was like, we'll just see about that. About a couple months later, I realized that music was an opportunity that God had brought to me, and I wasn't taking advantage of it. And I said to God, listen, I don't know, and I don't care anymore. Here's the song. I'm just going to sing it. And I decided at that moment I was just going to surrender to the singing of the song. The song was, as the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul longs for you. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. Psalm 42. And as I sang the song, for the first time not worrying about the craziness and the pointlessness of the music, and just singing it, the words of the psalmist written thousands of years before expressed exactly the desire of my heart to know God more deeply. And everything changed for me. That one moment began with me saying, I'm just going to sing. And to tell you the truth, I fear what might have happened in my life if I hadn't in that one moment said, God, I'll just sing. I don't know what God might do in your life or my life, but when we surrender ourselves to Him, whether it's in music or anything else, God responds. And He reaches out to us and He says, I love that. So I want us right now to prepare our hearts for a moment. I'm going to ask you to bow your heads and just ask God, God, have I been holding back when it comes to offering myself to you in worship? Have I been using music as its own tool, or have I been using music as a tool to be extravagant before you, God? And take just a moment of silence. I invite you to reflect, jot some things down on the card, or spend a moment in prayer asking God. And then we are going to get loud.
Thank you for listening to this message from Lafayette Community Church. We believe that God has a full and fulfilling life in store for you, and we want to help you live it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, Pastor Jeff, through the web form at LafayetteCommunityChurch.com. And as always, I encourage you to plug into a solid, God-honoring community wherever you may be. Life is a journey, and no one should ever walk alone.